mentioned a seaside view a lot. She hints that there's a chance the third princess from Clearwater Port might be the one pulling the strings. She suspects Princess Garcia Wimbledon might be holding Tyre's family hostage, using her as a pawn to eliminate our hero. Judging by how Tyre chose to end things, it seems she was trained for years before being assigned here. The boy feels deeply disappointed that his own siblings are so quick to eliminate each other for the crown. Suddenly, the woman leans in close to our hero's ear and whispers that she has to go because someone is coming their way. The boy blushes a bit, maybe catching a peek of her assets straining against her shirt, before she disappears into thin air. Just then, the old consul shows up with some good news. A bunch of folks have volunteered to take on the demons during the demon months. This puts a big grin on the prince's face, and he decides he needs to go see it all for himself. But before heading there, the old man genuinely asks if he really intends to have these regular folks go up against the demons. Once outside, our hero also feels bummed out and sees that the consultant's worries were legit. These people don't look like fighters. They seem more like street thugs. On the other hand, the knight is all gung-ho about how he picked these folks based on what our hero wanted. But looking at these poor souls with their frail bodies, it's clear this knight totally missed the mark. The prince just facepalms himself, and it seems like our hero expected a lot from people who barely scrape by. Even the consultant suggests considering other recruits instead of these commoners. But our hero seems dead set on using them anyway, as if he has cracked the code already. Our hero believes that it's all about people power when it comes to building a strong army, whether they're wielding medieval swords or modern tech. The knight suggests starting sword training tomorrow, but our hero waves it off. Instead, he tells the knight to group them up, then hits the jogging trail. He also tells him to bring that iron axe hunter from earlier in tow, and suggests the knight to sit tight and enjoy the show. By noon, the hunters joined our hero's cause. But the knight's not exactly thrilled with this new training approach. Coming from a family steeped in warrior tradition, he doesn't get why these folks are getting rewarded with eggs just for standing around all morning, especially since eggs are pricey as hell. Once again, our hero tells him to chill and enjoy the show. Like, he already knows you can't whip up a top-notch army in a few medieval months, and he is not after muscle-bound brutes who can tear enemies apart with their bare hands. All he wants is disciplined soldiers. To get results fast, he's using military techniques he learned back in college. He's seen how quickly people can unify under this method, and he is betting these folks will follow suit. After a while, the carriages show up and folks eagerly line up for their eggs. People still can't quite wrap their heads around the idea of eggs as rewards. The knight clangs his plate loudly to get everyone's attention and orders them to form 4 lines. He lays down the law that food will be handed out in order, and stragglers would wait till the end. There's a mix of nerves and compliance as everyone queues up. Meanwhile, the knight is still puzzled why the prince is bothering to teach these kinds of basic things to these people. Suddenly, the crowd erupts into murmurs and talks, chanting Iron Axe, who seems to have quite the reputation around these parts. The prince declares a break after lunch, followed by a visit to the guard barracks in town. Iron Axe is appointed as their captain, tasked with teaching everyone how to set up tents. As soon as our hero finishes speaking, there's a buzz of gossip about the prince putting someone like Iron Axe in charge of their platoon. To calm everyone down, he reminds them that Iron Axe isn't local, just like the witches that do not belong to Grey Castle. Our hero stresses that in Border Town, everyone's treated equally, no matter where they're from. As long as they're not criminals, they're welcome here. The prince unrolls a ridiculously long sheet, longer than your average grocery list, and tells the chief knight to pay more attention to these rules than to who gets to be captain. He stresses that everyone needs to memorize and stick to these rules if they want their usual egg during meals. The chief knight scratches his head at the idea of visiting Teacher Carl after dinner, wondering aloud how reading and writing will help fight demons. But the prince brushes off his concerns and says a well-educated army is always more effective. According to him, history has proven this point many times. Next up, we're at City Hall in Border Town. There we see our hero stagger out of his room, still half asleep. Suddenly, Nightingale pops up out of nowhere and teases him about his newfound habit of sleeping a lot lately. It seems she has also helped herself by eating some of our hero's breakfast. Of course, the boy does not seem to be really happy to see her eating his breakfast and coming inside without his permission. He then starts wondering aloud if she was never taught to be more subtle around royalty. As he takes his seat, the lady adopts a respectful posture and asks if she's being polite enough. Then she casually mentions she knows the prince isn't into all that fancy, unnecessary politeness. The boy finds himself startled to see that she seems to know what he exactly prefers. He sighs and tells her to just eat the whole breakfast so he can at least ask for another serving. She dives into the food while the prince starts flipping through his new blueprints. The lady then curiously asks why he's been ordering so much ice-ons lately, because it's already dead of the winter, and if our hero wants to make his whiskey cool, he can simply put his drink outside. Seeing his wide-open order book, Prince Ronald realizes that she must have seen everything he has been ordering lately. So, he spills the beans that he's trying to make cheese. And to do that, he needs things to stay below freezing. While the girl praises our hero for his clever ideas, inside our hero's mind, we discover he just fed her a lie about making cheese, because he is making something even more confidential, which he does not want to disclose to her, because he doesn't fully trust her like he does with Anna and Nana. He wants to gather more intel about her before revealing his true secrets. He is apparently focused on developing guns, which are easier to make than steam engines. He fears that if anyone discovers his methods, it could seriously derail his ambitious plans. Also, the isons he ordered is basically known as saltpeter, a substance wealthy folks use to cool drinks in summer. And this name, isons, is just a fancy name given by the nobles. But what's crucial is that saltpeter is a key ingredient in making gunpowder, adding another layer of secrecy to his activities. The boy then changes the conversation by asking if witches train assassins as well, aside from searching for the Holy Mountain. The lady mentions that they're a group of oddballs who came together because of their dream of finding the Holy Mountain, and she only joined the Witch Cooperation Association about 2 years ago. Hearing this, the boy asks if she worked for someone else before joining the association, and wonders if there are people who accept witches. Putting down her plate, the lady laughs at the idea, calling it ridiculous. Sadly, she reveals that if her previous owner had known she had become a witch, he wouldn't have let her through the front door. Furthermore, she admits that if she hadn't been useful to him later on, he would have disposed of her quietly and quickly. The boy becomes more curious and demands further explanation about her past, but the lady decides to stay silent, promising a detailed account when the time is right. She also reassures him not to sweat it, mentioning she's been free for the last 5 years and has no plans to be anyone's pawn. The boy stays quiet, looking kinda down, and 5 days breeze by since that chat. Out in the courtyard, we see our hero has finally finished his first gun after tackling loads of production hiccups, and he is thrilled to keep this beauty all to himself. One big reason he's been working on steam engines was to churn out guns in bulk. So, he had to nail a prototype first before ramping up production. But at this rate, he worries he'll only crank out 4 of these bad boys by the month of demons. Meanwhile, the knight's scratching his head over how these supposed muskets will help in fighting demons. The boy just tells him to round up the village's top hunters and form a killer squad to wield these weapons. But the prince finds himself completely creeped out when the knight suggests using patrol guards instead of hunters. Well, looking back at those soldiers, it seems our hero's reluctance to entrust these guns to these puny frail patrol guards is indeed justifiable. In the dark tunnels beneath Roland Castle, a few soldiers are marching through the tunnels. Suddenly, one of them leaps into the air and attacks another soldier. The scar-faced soldier tells this thin mustache to surrender or face the same fate as his friend Greymut. As the thin mustache soldier recalls his fallen friend, he becomes even more riled up, vowing never to let these hooligans set foot in the castle. With a surge of strength, he flings the scar-faced man back, causing his sword to fly off. Thin Mustache then readies his own sword and thrusts it into the left shoulder of Scarface, declaring that, "This is for Greymut." As he bleeds, Scarface scoffs, amazed that an ordinary guard patrol like the Thin Mustache soldier could hurt him. The Thin Mustache gets annoyed upon hearing this, and makes it abundantly clear that while Scarface was wasting time gambling and sleeping in pubs, he and his friends were training every day to protect their hometown. He swears he won't let Longsong and his partners disrupt their village's peace. As the Thin Mustache leaps to finish off his opponent, another cocky guy joins the fray and stabs him right in the chest. The poor guy writhes in pain from the dagger wound and collapses to the ground. Meanwhile, the other intruders stand over him confidently. Surprisingly, the Thin Mustache manages to pull the dagger out of his chest, despite the agony, and in a swift move, he throws it toward a nearby torch. The dagger shatters the torch, extinguishing the flame and plunging the area into darkness. Up in the castle's food storage, the Thin Mustache hides himself in one of the bins. He's certain these infiltrators are here to attack the food supplies. If they succeed in spoiling all the food, the border town will have no choice but to evacuate to Longsong Fortress. The soldier starts feeling disappointed in himself for not being able to protect a vital food bank while their prince is busting his butt for this town's progress. All of a sudden, his face goes terrified as the door behind him swings open, revealing those rowdy soldiers once again. One of the intruders grabs the soldier by the collar and throws him to the ground, telling him to quit running and surrender to Duke Ryan's demands. In case you forgot who Duke Ryan is, he's that white-haired guy who doesn't want our hero anywhere near his territory. The soldier stands his ground despite the threat, boldly stating that his prince will definitely foil Duke Ryan's plans. The intruders just scoff at the idea, laughing off the prince's abilities. Then, the leader tells his lackeys to take out the soldier and mess up the food while they're at it. Without hesitation, a lackey smacks the Thin Mustache guy hard on the head. Before losing his consciousness, the poor soldier wonders if this is how he will meet his end. But it seems fate has other plans, as Nightingale suddenly arrives on the scene. She questions the intruders if they're enjoying themselves in someone else's territory, but warns them their party is about to get shut down real quick. The intruders demand to know who she thinks she is. Nightingale coolly replies she's just a local from the border town. She questions why these clowns are here and suggests they look like sewer rats creeping out of the drains. Looks like those intruders do not realize how deep in shit they are, and their leader tells his crew to just take down this mysterious lady. But she just smiles, and in a flash, she swings her hand, and suddenly bodies are hitting the floor. Our soldier watches with bleary eyes as this mystery person swiftly takes out the intruders. Before he can even figure out who she is, he drifts off into unconsciousness. The next day rolls around, and we find the intruders' bodies scattered in the food storage. The knight inspecting the scene is scratching his head. He's trying to piece together who could have taken out these guys. He knows the thin mustache guy couldn't have done it with his injuries. The most likely scenario is some outsider jumped in without needing any backup. Their moves were so slick, the enemies didn't stand a chance. And there's no mess left behind. No blood or barrels knocked over. Not even a scratch in the place. Suddenly, he's thinking there must be someone with serious sword skills around. He starts feeling proud of his clan's history and their knack for knightly arts. The soldier gives his report. The autopsies are done, and they've identified the corpses. 8 were from our town's guard, and 1's still a mystery. The chief knight asks about the survivors. The soldier says Captain Brian's getting special healing, but Scarface got tossed in the dungeon and locked up. The knight tells the soldier to wake Scarface pronto for interrogation. Meanwhile, the prince feels annoyed that he hasn't made any real progress yet, and these guys are already trying to bring him down. But he's thankful Nightingale swooped in and saved the day. Nightingale reassures him that those intruders couldn't have gotten to him anyway, with Anna sleeping right under his floor. That's when the prince gets an idea. He proposes that Nightingale become his secret bodyguard, offering her a gig that pays better than Anna's. A sweet place to live with a garden, 2 days off each week, and paid vacations. But even with all those tempting perks, she politely turns down his offer, explaining she can't leave the association and her friends there. The prince suggests bringing everyone to town since there's plenty of space after the construction. He assures her there won't be any discrimination, and they can live freely. Once again, she declines, saying she'll think about it in the future, leaving the prince feeling a bit awkward after being turned down. Moving on, the boy asks if she safely sent Nana back home after healing the soldiers. She confirms she did, mentioning Nana was scared when she saw the injured soldiers. But that's not surprising. Given her experience is mostly patching up chickens, healing a person covered in wounds was understandably terrifying for her. Returning to the conversation, the boy asks her if she has figured out which of his siblings might be behind this infiltration. The lady points out that this time it wasn't one of his siblings behind the infiltration. The culprits bribed the patrol guards of the border town. Their plan was so sloppy they left 2 witnesses alive who didn't even have the guts to kill themselves before getting caught. She assures him they'll figure it out soon, since the chief knight is already grilling one of the infiltrators. She also mentions these guys were surprisingly wimpy and tearful compared to the 3rd princess's infiltrator. While everything is peaceful outside the castle, we see our hero strolls alongside the chief knight, heading to visit the thin mustache soldier. When the soldier spots the prince in the room, he's totally thrown and jumps in his bed. The prince starts off by praising Brian for his guts and the fight he put up. But Brian gets emotional, saying it was his buddy who really stepped up, the true hero who sacrificed his life. But the prince reassures the soldier, saying his friend's funeral will give him the recognition he deserves for his bravery. As for Scarface, he's getting the full punishment. He's set to hang in 3 days, and the prince hopes Brian will be well enough to see it happen. Thin Mustache then mentions Scarface supposedly has noble blood, hinting it might stir up trouble with Longsong Fortress. The prince brushes it off, explaining Scarface might have noble lineage from the Elk family, but he's got no titles or land. Besides, he tried to burn down all of Bordertown's food, causing a huge mess that can't just be ignored. With reassurances that someone else will handle patrols, the prince tells Thin Mustache to rest up. In the coming month of demons, he promises to honor him as a brave knight of the prince. Next, we're up on the city wall where the new recruits are getting trained hard by Hunter Iron Axe. Iron Axe suddenly grabs everyone's attention, and they snap to attention because the prince is here for an inspection. But it seems our prince has no clue what he's supposed to say during this inspection. He awkwardly starts walking up to a random soldier and decides to ask about their daily routine. With a friendly smile, he asks the soldier how he feels about the training and if he's been eating well lately. The soldier looks really nervous in front of the prince, while our prince seems to be copying something he saw on TV once. Out of nowhere, the soldier drops down to his knees, leaving the prince totally puzzled and kinda weirded out, wondering if he's missed something. Meanwhile, the soldier's got tears in his eyes. Not just him, but everyone's really moved that the prince came to check on them personally. The boy reaches out and tells the soldier to get back on his feet. It looks like all those good meals our hero fed them have really perked up the soldiers. Then the prince reminds everyone they can speak up if they have suggestions or complaints, and promises to make sure everyone gets enough to eat. Out of the blue, that shy kid from earlier pipes up. He says there aren't enough soldiers in their civilian army, and with the way they're training, he's worried they won't stand a chance against the demons when they attack. Whispers and murmurs start buzzing around, everyone thinking the same thing, and wonders if the prince plans to hire mercenaries to fight off demons. But our hero cuts them off with a hand gesture, and with a big grin, he asks the soldier for his name. The soldier Vanner replies nervously. Our hero gives Vanner props for his sharp eye, and agrees that relying solely on a civilian army to defend the entire wall doesn't not make any sense. However, he points out that demons are just mutated animals and beasts, not as smart as humans, and Iron Axe has proven this by taking on those monsters directly. Iron Axe nods in agreement, saying those creatures are exactly as the prince described, but he admits hybrids are a whole different ballgame, posing a tougher challenge altogether. The prince comes up with this idea to strategically place fences, ditches, and hills to guide the dumb beasts into traps they set up. He figures it'll work since these creatures are pretty simple-minded. Iron Axe still seems worried about getting too close to these beasts. He says spears and bows won't cut it against them if push comes to shove. Our hero smirks and agrees, knowing traditional weapons won't do the trick. That's why he's cooked up these new weapons that are more dependable than a whole squad of armored knights. The crowd's buzzing to see these new toys. We're out on the testing grounds, and suddenly there's this massive explosion that rattles the whole place. Our hero's over the moon that his gunpowder invention worked like a charm, but the others are just freaking out. Iron Axe even mutters something about this explosion being God's wrath. The explosion blows a big hole in the ground and even takes out the test rabbits in the process. The prince tells everyone to get up close and examine everything to gather test data. Our hero is pumped that they can create such a powerful weapon just by mixing a bunch of elements in the right ratio. With everything wiped out by the blast, the hunter suggests they wouldn't have to worry about monsters if they had this bad boy doing its job. But the prince reminds them they won't have enough gunpowder before the month of demons. Still, he's excited they can work around it, relying mainly on guns and crossbows, while keeping the gunpowder as their trump cards. In the next scene, Nightingale paints how the world looks to her, just black and white, with no clear boundaries. She navigates through paths that defy normal limits by shifting her perspective. Up, down, left, and right aren't fixed. They collide, break away, or overlap. Moving along these ever-shifting lines gives her a bird's-eye view, letting her swing through anything. Other than the black and white, she can also see some other colors as well. For example, witches are the essence of magic, and she can sense the magic flowing and fading within their bodies. In this world, only witches hold something truly amazing, and Anna's magic stands out with its vibrant, rich colors. Suddenly, Anna calls her out, and Nightingale appears back in the real world. When Anna asks what Nightingale was doing here, Nightingale smoothly changes the subject, mentioning she brought some fish cakes. Anna's face lights up with delight at the sight of these treats, but Nightingale hesitates, saying she needs to wash her hands first. Instead of water, Anna just uses her fiery powers to cleanse her hands, which impresses the women big time. That is when it hits Nightingale that Anna is the only witch in their group with such incredible powers. This realization fills her with both dread and sadness, knowing that such strong abilities come with risks. With the month of demons approaching, she worries about Anna enduring unimaginable pain during her puberty. Nightingale gently suggests that Anna should join the association, where other witches can support her. She assures Anna that everyone would be thrilled to have someone as powerful as her among them. But then Nightingale's tone turns serious as she admits to Anna that she might not make it through this winter. Anna then asks Nightingale where she lived before joining the association. Nightingale replies that she used to live in a big city to the east, not too far from the capital. Anna then follows up by asking if Nightingale was happy back then. Nightingale's mind immediately flashes back to her past, recalling herself feeling miserable, locked up with shackles and a power-suppressing locket. Instead of answering directly, Nightingale turns the question around and asks Anna why she wants to know. Anna opens up, sharing that she had a tough life in the slums of Border Town. Her father sold her to the church for 25 golden coins, and it was our hero who freed her from those chains. Now Anna feels genuinely happy to be where she is. Nightingale gently reminds Anna that leaving the castle isn't an option due to how witches are hated by others, but Anna remains optimistic, trusting the prince to change things for them. Suddenly, their chat gets cut off when Nana storms in, slamming the doors before her. She's in tears and rushes to hug Anna, blurting out that things are about to hit the fan for her. Meanwhile, our hero is deep in slumber, dreaming of heroic exploits, and that is when Nightingale rudely wakes him up. She's absolutely livid, informing the sleepyhead that Nana's father is on his way and suspects she's a witch. Shocked to hear Nana's secret is out, the prince rushes into action, hoping he now has a shot to keep Nana in the castle. He wonders how the nobleman will react when he finds out his daughter is a witch. Will he plead with the prince to let her stay and keep her secret? When our hero finally steps outside, reality is far from what he was imagining. Nana's dad is fuming, demanding the immediate return of his daughter. After they settle into their seats, Nana's restless father calls her over to him. The little girl gets scared and asks if he's planning to sell her to the church. The man gets all chummy, saying the church would never take someone as clueless as her, so she better return back to her father. But our hero steps in, reminding him that his daughter is a witch. The man flat out refuses to believe it, and even when Nana herself confirms that she is a witch, the father gets really mad and suggests maybe Teacher Carl is just labeling another girl as a witch. That's when our hero gives Anna a nod, signaling her to show off her fiery magic powers. She does it right away, leaving the old man stunned to see witchcraft in action. Our hero tells him to calm down and assures him they can explain everything. Eventually, the father starts to understand that his daughter is just here to practice her witch powers after all. But our hero feels creeped out by the implication that her father was thinking of him as a pedophile for calling little girls into the castle. The boy then gets down to business, pointing out that Nana has healing abilities that could be invaluable in Border Town during the months of demons, to aid in healing the injured. However, the dawning father, Mr. Pine, politely declines, concerned for his daughter's safety if she stays here. Our hero reveals that opportunities often come with dangers, mentioning that from what he's heard, Nana's grandfather and Mr. Pine's father were courageous knights. The Pine family's noble lineage comes from their grandfather's heroic deeds. Mr. Pine agrees, and proudly recalls how his father once faced down an incredibly powerful demon and actually defeated it. He even has the demon's massive horn hanging over his fireplace to prove it. But then our hero points out how the Pine family is not as prestigious as it was before. Pine family is just a working-class citizens now, to which the father sadly admits. He then notices Pine's rough, calloused hands, proof that Mr. Pine hasn't given up on his warrior spirit and still trains daily to sharpen his sword skills. So, he cleverly suggests that Pine join in defending the border, promising to grant him enough land to become a true noble. Despite this tempting offer, Pine isn't willing to take the risk and prefers to send Nana to Longsong Fortress rather than see her in harm's way. Our hero reminds him that Longsong Fortress isn't as safe as Border Town. The church has eyes and ears everywhere there. If the truth about Nana gets out, not even he could protect her. He promises to prepare a small boat for a quick retreat to Longsong in case of trouble, ensuring Nana and Anna's safety. Finally, the old man puts his faith in the prince, nodding respectfully and pledging his loyalty to fight for our hero's cause. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief and smiles, but Anna pouts, showing her anger toward our hero for even considering sending her away. She makes it crystal clear that she's not going anywhere. The next day, the old constable shows up looking really worried that they've blown all their money on weapons and army training. He's fretting that if things keep going like this for a few more months, everyone's going to starve for sure. The boy facepalms himself and gives him permission to use his savings for their budget. The old man agrees but grumbles it won't solve their long-term problems. Our hero shrugs and says if the defenses fail, they'll evacuate the town as soon as possible, then sends the old man off to do as he's told. Once the constable's gone, the boy feels pretty crushed after draining every last penny he'd saved up, and if the border defenses still fail, he's screwed. Then, his mood perks up when Nightingale shows up again. The woman immediately points out that he had lied to the old man about leaving the town. The prince immediately admits his lie, because he does not want to spread distress among the already terrified town's people. Nightingale advises him to spend his time with Anna instead of stressing over politics. She shares her fear that Anna might not be around much longer, but the boy insists she will survive, because she has promised to beat those demons at all costs. Nightingale wonders how he can trust a witch cursed by demons. The boy just shrugs and says he believes in her, and further points out that he also trusts Nightingale as well. The woman just stares at our hero's poker face and realizes he's not lying. He casually points out that he doesn't lie without a good reason. Suddenly, they hear a commotion outside. Nightingale glances out the window and gets visibly anxious, noting that it's snowing. Winter has arrived. The boy decides to check on Hunter Ironaxe and his progress. At the shooting range, Ironaxe is using the guns and hitting bullseye after bullseye. The prince shows up and asks about the training. Ironaxe lights up like a kid, enthusiastically mentioning that he's nailed all the basics he was taught. The prince isn't surprised, because being a warrior through and through, Ironaxe has been able to master any weapon given to him. The man praises this iron pipe of the gods for its insane power. He grits his teeth, saying if he had this pipe when he fought that hybrid monster, it wouldn't have stood a chance. Ironaxe drops to his knees, overwhelmed that the prince entrusted such devastating power to a humble hunter like him, and promises not to let his prince down. The prince then checks in with his chief knight, Carter, asking how things are going. The knight looks a bit serious and mentions they could really use more than just the 2 guns they have. Our hero gets it and assures him that 2 more guns are already in the works and should be ready soon. He admits they rushed the gunpowder development because the months of demons are finally here. I'm starting to feel like this comic is turning into a manhwa version of Game of Thrones. Anyway, once he climbs up the city wall, the soldiers greet the prince right away. Seeing them bow their heads makes our hero feel sheepish, wishing he had taught them some proper military etiquette. The hunter points out that there aren't many demons after the first snow, but our hero tells him to stay cautious regardless. Suddenly they catch a sight of something, and there they see a demon in a distance. The soldiers start to panic, and one of them even asks if they should sound the alarm. Our hero tells the soldier to decide for himself, since he has more experience after their training. Finally, the soldier decides not to sound the alarm and puts his bow down. Our hero is relieved to see that his training of these soldiers is paying off, because dealing with the presence of the demon should be handled with caution instead of acting on impulses. The beast starts walking toward the wall, picking up momentum. The prince squints his eyes and gazes closely, wondering if it's a mutated fox. The hunter agrees, pointing out that the animal has recently been possessed, so it's not that threatening. The wolf gears up to jump over the wall, and the hunter quickly gets ready for the attack. Chief Knight Carter steps forward, shielding the prince. Just as the beast lunges at them, the hunter lets loose an arrow that flies through the air and instantly brings down the beast. The prince peers down to see the creature lying dead on the ground. The knight lets out a sigh of relief that they avoided a close encounter. Meanwhile, our hero notices the strange black blood and can't help but wonder why it's like that. He's also puzzled about why witches can snap out of demonic influence, but these animals can't. Curiously, the boy asks if someone bitten by a demon could turn into a mindless ghoul. The hunter immediately dismisses the idea, saying there's no such thing as ghouls. Our hero breathes a sigh of relief, glad he won't have to deal with a zombie apocalypse. He then asks if the meat is edible. The knight started to freak out upon hearing this, and questions why the prince would consider eating cursed meat. The hunter agreed, recalling how he once fed a chunk of demon flesh to hunting dogs, which led to their deaths immediately. The boy sighs in disappointment, thinking it's a total waste of good meat. Both the knight and hunter are shocked that the prince was actually considering eating it, but our hero immediately reminds them how scarce food has gotten, and it would have been great if they were able to chow down on the meat they were about to hunt down. Suddenly, a soldier barges in, blurting out that someone's hurt. Apparently, it's not one of the regular guards, but a worker from the northern mines. Next thing you know, Nana's sitting alone when Nightingale suddenly pops up, asking if she's bored. The little girl jumps a mile after getting scared out of her wits, and the woman quickly apologizes for scaring her like that. Nightingale then mentions that Anna's still busy working and might be back soon. Nana asks if Anna's still tackling those dirty mounds, and Nightingale nods in agreement. Nightingale then sits down on the chair and grabs Anna's tea out of habit without her permission. It seems Nana is feeling a bit down because of her new job. The prince has assigned her to heal the wounded guards. It's not that she's unwilling to do the job, but seeing the injured soldiers traumatizes her. She wants to overcome her fear to keep using her abilities effectively, and wishes she were as courageous as Anna. Suddenly, Nightingale spots someone coming, and a soldier bursts in with urgency, telling Nana to come downstairs pronto, because there's a badly hurt patient who needs her help. Down in the infirmary, the injured man screams in agony, begging his prince to relieve his excruciating pain. Seeing the soldier there, desperate for his life, makes our hero anxious as he wonders if this man's burns are from the steam engine malfunction in the northern mines. Nana arrives at the scene, trembling in fear as she approaches the burned miner. Her father gives her a reassuring pat on the head. Nana gulps down her fears, calming herself immediately, and declares that she's ready to proceed. Once the curtains are drawn around her, she takes a deep breath, summons her magical ability, and begins healing the man. Shortly after, the injured man is completely healed, looking as fresh as a freshly picked cucumber. Meanwhile, the father is really amazed and proud of her little girl after witnessing her healing abilities for the first time, and calls it nothing short of a miracle. Knight Brian happily mentions it's all thanks to Nana that he's also back from the brink of death. The prince freaks out upon hearing this and quickly tells Brian to keep it down. He reminds him that when Nana healed him, she snuck out without her dad knowing, and he doesn't want to deal with her angry father. Now that the injured man is awake and fully healed, he can't believe he's actually alive. Prince Roland assures him it's real, and proudly reveals that Nana, who is one of the witches, saved his life. Later that night, when our hero gets back to his room, Nightingale greets him and asks why he had to spill Nana's secret so early. And that's when we flash back to the moment when the miner is shocked after learning about Nana's true identity. He starts freaking out and reminds everyone about witches being devils. But her dad got annoyed real quick and set him straight that his daughter wasn't involved with any devils, and she was the one who saved his life. Out of nowhere, the miner sits up and drops to his knees in front of the little girl, apologizing big time for his earlier words and thanking her deeply for saving his life. Back in the present moment, our hero reflects that it was the perfect time to reveal her as a witch, considering how well it all played out. Plus, if they're going to use her powers against demons in the coming months, hiding her identity as a witch wouldn't have been an option anyway. He also stresses that since the church folks have already left for Longsong Fortress, there is no one to bully his girls. The lady asks him if he had already planned everything from the start. The boy immediately agrees, saying the snow has blocked the roads to the fortress and the seaports are under his control. The church has no means of learning what is going on in Border Town, let alone taking direct action against witches. This gives him a sweet 3 months to change public opinion about witches being the reincarnation of evil. He points out how Nana is now seen as an angel instead of a villain in the eyes of the soldiers she has recently healed. They can continue using her power to heal everyone, which will help boost everyone's morale. Once they remove prejudice from the civilians' minds, everyone will be happy. Nightingale has no clue what our hero is trying to achieve by all this, so she asks him why he is doing so much for the witches. Our hero reminds her once again that his border town does not discriminate by origin, and someone as loathed as witches should live on this land like every other person. The woman's eyes widen hearing our hero's big plans, and it's clear she's got something important to get off her chest. She admits she wasn't straight with our hero before. The prince is taken aback by this revelation, and the woman starts explaining how her sisters in the association have been moving around for ages, losing hope along the way. All they want now is a safe place to be happy, even if it's just a castle. At first the boy is confused by her confession, but then he's stunned to realize she's actually open to bringing all the witches to the border town. But she quickly brings him back down to earth, warning him that if witches come to the castle, he'll be facing off with the church. The boy reassures her, saying the church's main headquarters is far away. Even if they find out about witches leaving the border town, they won't march all the way to Grey Castle just for him. He's already plotting to gather enough influence to rival the church and create a world where witches can live alongside regular folks. He dreams of expanding that world to Grey Castle, or maybe even the whole kingdom. The next scene takes us to the capital of Grey Castle. There, soldiers on their horses are marching down the road when their captain suddenly yells for everyone to stop. This person looks really pumped as they finally return to the castle. The folks inside the castle light up the sky with fireworks, welcoming the man about to enter the city once again, Gerald Wimbledon, the first prince of Grey Castle. It's hilarious to see that these suckers have explosive material to make fireworks, even though it's been only a few chapters since our hero invented gunpowder in this primitive society. Anyway, the gates come down and Prince Gerald heads into the city with his crew. Once inside, he gets straight to the point and tells everyone he's here to claim what's rightfully his from his father. 3 shady characters show up, bowing before their prince and reporting that they've already done what they were tasked with. Prince Gerald then asks if they've managed to switch out the royal guards of the king as planned. The lackey admits there's been a snag in the plan due to some issues, and they've only been able to replace the guards in the king's chamber. The man waves off the concern, saying as long as he and his crew can get into the castle, they're good. The lackey quickly reassures him that there won't be anyone stopping their entry. The old man then mentions that Prince Gerald's fate star, the Heaven Star, is leaving the equinox and will be gone from this hemisphere in about 4 months. He asks if Gerald remembers what that star activity symbolizes. Gerald's mind drifts back to childhood memories of playing with his younger siblings. Then, he snaps back to reality and admits he already knows what those stars mean. This means he's ready to break the rules of the challenge their father set for them, and Prince Gerald will be taking the throne of Grey Castle. Outside the king's room, the prince catches a weird odor and asks his lackey about the strange smell of blood. The old guy explains that the king had called for a servant girl who noticed the staff change when she left, so they had to get rid of her. Seems like things are getting interesting because the king hasn't been around women since their mother passed away. As he's about to enter, the old man points out there's no guard patrol, making it easier to move around. The prince scoffs that he's not sneaking in like a rat. He's here proudly to discuss inheriting the throne with his father. But if talking fails, he'll try something else. He grips his sword and leans toward the door. The scent of blood just gets stronger. Once he takes a peek inside, he finds blood and smashes through the door. Inside, he discovers his brother standing there, and the third king of Grey Castle, Wimbledon, lies dead with a dagger in his chest. The assassin behind this is Timothy Wimbledon, the second prince of Grey Castle. Seeing his older brother, Timothy claims he didn't want to do it, but had no choice. Just like the first prince had no choice other than to come here. Almost instantly, a bunch of soldiers pop up right behind the first prince and surround him, catching him off guard. The older brother asks his younger sibling how long he'd been planning this. Timothy explains that the decree their father set was like a chess game. He admits he planned to play by the rules, but the third princess started playing dirty. He also points out Gerald as a dirty player, suggesting the first prince wouldn't have rushed all the way across the kingdom to the capital without a heads up from his astrologer lackey. Seems like his lackey has also betrayed the first prince, though the old man clarifies he never lied, When the heavens move from the equinox, it symbolizes a seeker who's lost their way, but also foretells downfall. The first prince gets annoyed and yells at his younger brother, reminding him how he was the favorite son, given all the advantages by the king. Yet he killed their father. In response, Timothy grins shamelessly, pointing out the first prince's hypocrisy, since he was also there to kill the king if talking didn't work out. The first prince trembles, probably after seeing his brother dropping truth bombs so brutally. He asks Timothy if he intentionally lured him here to get rid of him as well. Timothy just shrugs, saying he didn't plan to confront their sister just by staying put to kill his older brother. He's kinda impressed their sister also saw all this coming before the decree was even written. Timothy goes on to explain he wants to end this royal decree early because his Valencia city isn't like their sister's Clearwater port, which is breeding warriors like rabbits. He needs an army, a big enough one to challenge her sister, and that's only possible if he's rocking the Grey Castle crown. The first prince gets furious and charges at his brother, but the soldiers quickly intervene. One of them strikes him from behind with a spear, forcing him to drop to his knees in front of his younger brother. Timothy devilishly informs his brother that he'll be framed for killing the king and labeled a murderer, and he will face the guillotine for his crime as well. The soldier pins the first prince down, but he keeps protesting, asking if Timothy even has the right to judge him, and vows to expose Timothy's crimes to everyone in public. But Timothy has covered all his bases. He's prepared a potion called the Silencer. Once someone drinks it, they won't be able to utter a word. After executing his brother, Timothy plans to play the grieving role perfectly. With no one else in line for the throne, he'll become king without breaking a sweat. He further tells his brother to curse his sister for the terrible fate he's about to face, while the first prince's mind flashes back to a memory once again, and the soldiers start dragging Gerald out of the place. The cunning fox who betrayed the first prince starts calling Timothy king, declaring that the crown is already his. Timothy gives the man a verbal high five for a job well done, but then he pulls out a presumably poisonous pill and tells the man to swallow it if he doesn't want to be betrayed later. Timothy looks at his father, gritting his teeth in frustration at seeing him dead before his eyes. The scene flashes back to the past when Timothy reported to the king that Gerald was on his way to the capital with intentions to forcibly take the crown. Timothy asked if the king had a plan to prevent this. The king just grinned manically, leaving the boy confused. In the next moment, the king pulled out a dagger, swung with all his force, and thrust it into his own chest, dying immediately before Timothy's eyes. Right in the middle of things, Timothy is pissed off, trying to figure out who's stirring up trouble in the fight for the crown. He's dead set on finding that bastard and showing them what happens when you mess with royalty. Looks like the women who visited the king earlier must be involved in this mess. In any case, we're back at the border town castle where everything's been pretty smooth lately. The steam engine prototype in the mines got fixed up, no accidents, and demons haven't been causing trouble either. Our hero's been chilling out, brainstorming how to boost the town's economy and fill up his empty wallet back again. But then, bam! His peaceful moment gets crashed by the knight barging in with bad news. A massive horde of demons is swarming outside the walls. Down at the border, below the wall, a bunch of monsters are howling their heads off. Up above, the soldiers look freaked out at the sheer numbers. And let's not forget Vonner. He was just a regular miner who ended up joining the army just to eat damn eggs. One of the beasts charges at the wall and directly hits HTE wall, leaving the entire wall shaking. And that also did quite a damage to the wall, but the monster immediately falls to the ground and the wolf-type monster starts marching down. Hunter Iron Ace quickly tells everyone to gear up their spears. As soon as the wolves are right on top of them, the terrified Vanner gathers his guts and stabs those beasts at the captain's command. One of the wolves manages to climb up, but the captain swiftly whips out his gun and blows the monster's brains out. With the immediate threat dealt with, Iron Ace tells everyone to stay focused and keep an eye on what's ahead. Suddenly, a soldier screams as they're attacked, their belly pierced deeply. Seeing their guts spill out terrifies Vanner to his core. The knight and the prince finally arrive at the scene. The knight tells Vanner to chill out and remember his training. Once the soldier regains composure, he snaps back to his senses and orders the others to take the injured soldier to the hospital while everyone else holds their ground and fights off the demons beneath the wall. The prince can't help but smile at the sight of Vanner showing such discipline. He's glad that all that egg-eating didn't go to waste in training the civilian army after all. Suddenly, something catches their eye on the ground, something so freaky that even our hero starts to freak out. The hunter, equally spooked, quickly pulls out his gun, saying they've officially stumbled onto trouble for the day. Our hero's mind is spinning at the sight of this behemoth, a disgusting creature that seems to break all the rules of biology. He never thought he'd come face to face with such a mutant monster. The soldiers rain arrows down on the behemoth, but it's like shooting toothpicks at a tank. The arrows just bounce off its thick, mountain-like shield. They look to their leader, asking what the heck they should do next. Meanwhile, the monster keeps stomping along, each step rattling the whole dang ground. Realizing they need more firepower, our hero tells his crew to get their muskets ready. When the monster gets close enough, they start blasting away, but it's about as effective as trying to stop a T-Rex with a water gun. The soldiers start freaking out when even the muskets can't do squat against this monster. The prince quickly tells them to chill and orders Vice Captain Vanner to round up some guys and grab dynamite from storage. After dishing out orders, he tries to get everyone to listen, but bam! The giant behemoth demolishes the wall they busted their butts to build. At this point, the prince is pretty darn sure they're screwed. He didn't figure the monster would be this tough and calls for an immediate retreat before shit goes down real bad. As the wall crumbles, Nightingale swoops in and saves our hero from a nasty fall. Once they're back on solid ground, the boy asks her what she's doing there. She explains she came because she was worried, and now it looks like her worries were on point. She asks our hero how he plans to handle the monster. He assures her he's still got a trick up his sleeve, and right on cue, Vanner strolls back with dynamite in hand. Our hero jumps in, shouting at Vanner to light the fuse and chuck the dynamite under the monster's legs. Meanwhile, poor Vanner's freaking out in this life-or-death situation. Finally, he gets the fuse lit, plops the dynamite down, and bolts out of there while the fuse starts sizzling. Once that fuse burns down, boom. The whole place shakes with a massive explosion, hitting the monster square in the gut. Everyone starts busting out victory moves as they watch the monster crash lifelessly to the ground. The prince is grinning like he just aced a test. But their celebration is cut short when they spot more beasts roaring back at them, even though they're just regular old critters. But they are in numbers. The soldiers scramble to get their shields up, and our hero is standing there clueless and panicking. The boar suddenly lets out a roar and charges right at their group. One soldier, lying on the ground, can't believe his eyes as he sees this girl stepping into the fray. But this ain't just any girl, it's Anna, and she's no ordinary lady, and you better get that to your head. Anna stares down the monster, showing no fear. She taps into her powers and throws fire right at the boar. The flames hit the mark, roasting the boar alive. Our hero's jaw drops, totally caught off guard by what he's seeing. Our hero feels like a complete idiot for never thinking about Anna's role on the battlefield beyond her building and town projects. That's exactly why he kept her safe in the sickbay, to avoid any danger, and he has no clue how she got out of here. As one of Knight Brian drops down to his knees, he informs the prince that Miss Anna was worried about his safety and insisted on coming to the wall, and he was not able to stop her. Originally, our hero had planned to sway public opinion in favor of witches using Nana's abilities, and once more people accepted witches, our hero wanted to reveal Anna's existence publicly. But it seems like the cat is already out of the bag. The boy quickly orders Brian to protect Anna from the danger, and he instructs Nightingale to do the same. Meanwhile, Anna steps forward confidently as soldiers gather around her protectively. With a determined look, Anna raises her hands, flames flickering to life, and she creates a wall of fire in the hole in the wall, blocking the monsters from advancing any further. Our hero is completely shocked by the magnificence of Anna's fiery display, but monsters continue to emerge from the flames. That is when the boy locks eyes with Anna. And in that moment, the prince understands what needs to be done. He immediately grabs the gun from the knight's hand and begins shooting down the monsters, aiming straight for their heads. The sight of their prince taking action startles everyone. Our hero raises his own gun, rallying the soldiers to prepare their spears and charge forward. His crisp voice fills the atmosphere as he commands them to protect their wall and their border town. The crowd really gets fired up to protect their town, and everyone is ready to take those critters down. After a while, the last wolf standing takes a bunch of arrows and drops lifeless to the ground, finally letting the soldiers savor their victory. The knight is totally blown away by their successful defense of the turf. But then, the prince suddenly remembers Anna, and he starts losing his shit because he's been so busy commanding that he almost forgot about her. He's worried about how he'll explain all about her being a witch to the civilian army. As he frantically looks around for her, he notices something surprising. Everyone is showing her respect instead of calling her the reincarnation of some devil or whatever. The prince is almost clueless about this unexpected attitude toward her from the civilians. Even though her fiery power had scared him, it seems to have earned trust and gratitude from others as well. When Anna finally stands before the prince, she looks exhausted from using her powers and promptly faints, dramatically falling right onto our hero's chest. The next scene takes us to Clearwater Port at Garcia's residence, where the third princess gets the news that her father has kicked the bucket. According to the letter, her brother, Gerald the First Prince, has been fingered for the assassination and is now locked up by the guards. They're saying he didn't kill himself, but rather got slapped with an execution sentence by the bigwigs. This news really throws her knight for a loop, and he finds it all pretty fishy. After a bit of hemming and hawing, she admits her brother can be a bit of a dumbbell, but he's not dumb enough to wish for death. She lays out how Timothy's trying to shift the blame to Gerald to fool the public, but snagging control of all Grey Castle won't happen overnight. So, she's tweaking her plans accordingly. The knight, though, He's still scratching his head over why Timothy would pull such a stunt, especially when the king always favored him. That's when the princess drops a truth bomb. Timothy's scared of her. He's quaking in his boots at the sight of the black flag. She explains that Timothy's move was totally uncalled for. Sure, he's trying to pin the blame on Gerald for their dad's death, but he can't fool everyone forever. If he wants to take over all of Grey Castle, it will require a more elaborate and sustained effort. Therefore, she decides to adapt her plans accordingly. The lady decides to set sail for Grey Castle tomorrow. Her knight asks if she's planning to go head-to-head with Timothy. She tells him that if Timothy isn't waiting out the 5 years to let the decree end organically, she won't either. The knight looks anxious and mentions that the whole kingdom must be mourning the king's death by now. She jokes if he wants her to shed a tear too. The knight hastily says no and obediently drops to his knees, waiting for her next move. She then instructs him to go fetch the captain of the Black Fleet for her, because they are about to sail as soon as possible. Back in the border town, after that horrific raid by the monsters, there have been no further attacks. The injured soldiers were healed quickly and returned to their duties right away. The chief knight was tasked with using the hybrid monster shell to patch up the broken wall, making it one with the barrier. The largest factor in their victory against the large-scale invasion was undoubtedly Anna. However, it's been a few weeks since she fainted, and she still hasn't woken up. Nightingale mentions today's supposed to be her maturity day, but she's sure she is going to die in her sleep, because the pain of maturity can only be endured while awake. She somberly spills that she's seen too many witches die before her eyes, treated like animals, burned or tortured slowly by nobles for some twisted fun. The lucky ones live in exile, far from society, always chasing the holy mountain, a distant dream they can't catch. But she says Anna's not like the rest. Unlike the Association sisters, she's actually cared for here, valued by our hero, and given due respect. This, Nightingale explains, is what the holy mountain truly signifies: a life free from prejudice. In Anna's case, she has already achieved this. As the memories of Anna flood our hero's mind, her strength, her resolve from the day one to the moment she vowed to stay with the prince, he clutches her hand tightly, refusing to let her slip away. Just as midnight strikes, Nightingale notices Anna's puberty beginning, sensing the magic within her body stirring. A candle nearby starts glowing with an eerie green hue, startling our hero, who wonders if it's the work of demonic spirits. But there's no visible change in Anna herself. Then, unexpectedly, the candle's flame dwindles, causing a wave of anxiety, especially for the young Nana. The candle flickers back to life with that bright green energy, surprising everyone again. Suddenly, Anna opens her eyes, which shocks everyone present. Prince Roland hurries over, immediately asking how she's feeling. Thankfully, Anna seems totally okay. She reaches out her hand toward our stunned hero, and he's not quite sure what to expect. But then, a flame bursts to life over her palm, glowing in that vivid green color, which catches everyone off guard once more. After summoning his courage, Prince Roland cautiously reaches out to touch the flame. Just as he does, the scene shifts into the office, where we see our hero's bewildered face. He is shocked to hear that Nightingale has decided it's time for her to leave the border town. She remarks that Anna not only woke up but also survived being possessed by demons, something totally unexpected and unexplained. She suggests that Anna's new ability with those green flames seems to be fully under her control now, synced perfectly with her mind. Anna can adjust its heat, manipulate it, and even move it within a 5-meter radius whenever she wants. But she's still confused over how she dodged that painful experience, given her super strong magic. The guy figures maybe after she used up all her magic at the border, her magic tank was running on empty, which might have toned down the demon pain. You know, witches are all about magic stuff. Since witches gotta keep their powers hidden from the civilians, all that magic energy builds up inside them. So when they hit maturity, bam, it's like a pressure cooker of magic causing them agony. Nightingale nods along, seeing the logic in his theory, and decides she's got to jet back to the Association pronto. Winter's coming, and there's going to be a bunch of witches hitting puberty soon. She vows to bring any survivors back here to Prince Roland's town, hoping he'll take care of them like he did with Anna. But Prince Roland tells her to stay put, maybe wait till the demons have stopped popping up and the weather settles down. Nightingale smirks, saying even getting to Association a day early could save lives. Plus, she assures him the demons won't be able to detect her, so she's good to go. The prince then asks about her own awakening, to which the woman brushes it off, saying it's the start of spring and there's no need to worry since she has gotten used to the pain. Still, he advises her to take care on the road. Before disappearing, Nightingale pays her respects to Roland one last time and vanishes abruptly as usual. Her sudden disappearance leaves the prince unsettled because he's never been a fan of her habit of appearing and vanishing without warning. Sitting back, he sinks back into his thoughts, mulling over how if his theory about witches turns out to be true, it could be a game changer. He then looks over at his ridiculously long to-do list, realizing there's a mountain of tasks waiting for him. But just as he starts pondering where to begin, his consultant bursts in with urgent news. A messenger from Longsong Fortress has arrived. The ambassador seems unusually anxious, and the prince wonders if things are going south for Longsong Fortress. His eyes widen as he reads the message. The king has passed away. Redhead, the ambassador, quickly clarifies he's there under orders from Duke Rayan. The royal decree for the 5-year challenge has ended, and Majesty Timothy Wimbledon is now the new king of Grey Castle. The ambassador leaves our hero totally shocked when he reveals that Timothy wants to reward the Prince Roland with new territory and a new position. A moment later, the consultant expresses his grief over the king's death at the hands of the first prince and asks what they should do next. The prince reveals that everything about the situation seems too suspicious to believe, and he will decide after monitoring his two sisters' movements. He admits he doesn't know much about the fifth princess's motives, but he's sure she's not the type to take risks, so he wants to follow her lead. He's also certain that the capital will likely descend into chaos with this power shift, and their priority should be to safeguard their families. With that in mind, he tells his consultant to instruct the chief knight and all castle staff to write letters home. The prince wants to ensure that everyone's families are escorted to other towns to hide. The consultant expresses his gratitude for the prince's careful consideration. The prince also tells his consultant that he wants to stop exporting the town's metals and will only sell gems and rocks to Willowtown, as he wants to use the metals for himself to make more machinery. Additionally, he plans to incorporate more civilians into the army and train them accordingly. He feels smug as he considers the news that the ambassador brought a blessing in disguise. Roland is confident that as long as he hunkers down in Bordertown, someone will try to bite him, such as Duke Rayan from the Longsong Fortress. Once the months of demons pass, he is pretty sure that Duke Rayan will try to extend his influence across the western side of the kingdom under the new administration, and this is precisely what Roland wants. Industrialization is his priority, but what he lacks most is people. Bordertown's population is only around 2,000, limiting the expansion of his projects due to a labor shortage. Buying slaves, recruiting talented individuals, or increasing the birth rate seem unrealistic. On the other hand, if they can take Longsong Stronghold, he can gain a large number of freed people while accumulating wealth. Assimilation is easier, and invasion is the best way to grow the population and gather wealth. Roland acknowledges the hassle of challenging the entire fort of Longsong, and he can only wait for Nightingale to return with the witches. This is also the sole reason the prince wants to expand his civilian army and wants to make more machinery. The next scene takes us to the northern mountain range, where Nightingale proceeds down one of the tunnels. Her steps are soon halted by roots growing out and blocking the entrance. Nightingale immediately introduces herself, and the lady known as Leaf withdraws her roots and gets delighted to see her friend back. After exchanging pleasantries, Leaf reveals that one of the two witches, Erin or Ashley, failed to make it to maturity. They then decide not to dwell on gloomy things and proceed to get inside. Nightingale is looking forward to seeing her friend Wendy, and as soon as Wendy is called over by her friend, she spins around and greets Nightingale warmly, playfully calling her Veronica. Wendy takes Nightingale's hand in hers, causing Nightingale to blush and assert that she's not the same weak girl as before, preferring not to go by Veronica anymore. Wendy insists she shouldn't deny her past because it's a part of her. Nevertheless, Nightingale is glad to see her friend, and they embrace each other tightly. Wendy then inquires about Anna and whether Nightingale managed to help her through her maturity. With a smile, Nightingale reveals that Anna didn't need any saving at all. In fact, what they've discovered is going to change things for all the witches. In a few moments, Nightingale spills the beans to her sisters about the prince and how he's letting everyone stay in his border town without any discrimination against witches. Wendy's not buying it at first, but Nightingale swears up and down that the prince not only said it, but also saved Anna and Nana. Not only that, the prince does not believe in any bullshit about witches being possessed by devils, and stresses that witches get their power from themselves. To seal the deal, Nightingale reminds everyone about her ability to smell lies, so they can trust her when she says the prince is serious. She spills about his plans to protect witches and even go against the church if he even has to. Then she pulls out the steam engine blueprints, proving they can build a kick-ass sanctuary to rival the Holy Mountain. Just as Nightingale's painting this picture of paradise, some lady with green hair barges in, telling everyone to shut up. She seems like their teacher, and Nightingale quickly shows respect by bowing her head. The teacher gives Nightingale the stink eye, wondering aloud if she's saying the Holy Mountain they've been chasing forever is just a bunch of hot air. Next up, we're with the new king, Timothy, where a knight shows up with a stone called Divine Judgment, supposedly the ultimate weapon against demonic forces. The knight boasts that the church has confirmed its power to handle witches for ages, but Timothy's annoyed, blaming witches for his father's suicide. He orders the knight to keep capturing witches and scour the capital thoroughly for more. Meanwhile, back with Nightingale, She wakes up tied to a pillar with that same witch suppression stone around her neck. She's trying to figure out how she ended up in this mess. We flash back to when the green-haired lady freaked out at the idea of the prince siding with witches. She rants about how witches have been persecuted and killed for ages. She believes Nightingale has been deceived by the prince and insists that the pain of maturity is a sacred test for a witch's body and mind, and only those who endure it can achieve true power and find eternal peace in the holy mountain. Nightingale is shocked to realize that all the suffering witches endured was just a test for this woman. She's further annoyed at the thought that her fallen sisters, who endured so much pain, are simply dismissed as disqualified subjects. The teacher offers Nightingale a final chance to seek forgiveness for her ignorance and mistakes, promising her mercy. But Nightingale remains resolute, insisting she'll only take sisters with her who believe in her. As she tries to leave, a snake immediately grabs her feet, and before she can react, she blacks out from the venomous injection of petrification, waking up to find herself in her current bind. While they're face to face, Nightingale reminds her why he's using that stone of divine judgment even though they don't believe in that stuff. The snake lady says it's just a tool to punish disobedient kids. She reminds Nightingale how Wendy saved her from the clutches of the aristocrats. Instead of repaying that kindness, now Nightingale is trying to sell them all out to those filthy nobles just to mend her relationships with them again. Nightingale denies any such motive, emphasizing she only wants her sisters to live freely without fear of starvation or the pains of maturity, and believes everyone deserves the right to choose their own path. She points out how much Border Town has changed, pointing out that the steam engine blueprint she brought is just one of many miracles. The snake lady scoffs, saying she can't make heads or tails of the blueprint and tosses it into the fire, declaring that a hunk of steel can't move like it's alive and she's no fool. She then grabs the hot dagger and holds it just inches from Nightingale's neck, letting her know this is her last chance to beg forgiveness for trying to deceive the Witch Association. If Nightingale doesn't comply, she threatens to skewer her heart and turn her into an example for others. Even though she is staring at her death, Nightingale remains defiant. Instead of bowing her head, she'd rather take that dagger straight to her heart. That's when Wendy steps in, reminding them how many sisters they've already lost and they can't afford to lose another. The snake woman grows agitated, demanding to know if Wendy also believes Nightingale's lies. Wendy denies it, stating she's not planning to go to the border town, but she agrees with Nightingale that everyone should have the right to choose their own path. Wendy then asks if anyone wants to bail with Nightingale to the town, but nobody speaks up. Seeing this, Wendy suggests letting Nightingale go solo since she hasn't done anything to harm the gang. The others agree, telling their teacher to set Nightingale free. But the teacher goes absolutely bonkers, saying she can't risk letting Nightingale go because she might expose their turf location to the church. She swings her dagger, ready to strike, but before she can, Wendy steps in and stops her. Wendy grabs a coin and throws it hard at Nightingale, smashing the power suppressor stone. The teacher gets ticked off and goes after Wendy with a snake that bites her hand. But Nightingale springs into action. Before the teacher can react, she's screaming in pain with a sword in her chest, causing her to collapse to the ground. Before anyone can react, Nightingale and her friend start to disappear and exit the tunnel. Wendy doesn't seem to be in good spirits because the poison from the snake bite is spreading across her hand. To stop it from spreading further, Nightingale reluctantly grabs her dagger and severs Wendy's hand from her body. She keeps the hand with her, confident that Nana can heal it back soon. They've been walking forever, and it took them 3 days just to get here. Carrying Wendy is slowing them down further, and with her losing blood, Nightingale fears she won't last another 3 days. But her worries prove unnecessary when a mysterious newcomer arrives, ready to lend a helping hand. A newcomer looks like a boy at first glance, but she is actually a girl. She reassures Nightingale not to freak out. Her name is Lightning, and she recently joined the Witch Association. Nightingale stays cautious around this tomboy and asks if Kara sent her. Lightning shrugs it off, saying it's no wonder Nightingale doesn't recognize her since she's always out and about. She makes it clear she's here because, like Nightingale said earlier, everyone should live life their own way, and she's chosen to stick with Nightingale. Simple as that. She's totally pumped about all the machinery and exploding dynamite, being an explorer at heart. Nightingale wonders why someone so into adventure joined the association. Lightning explains that finding the Holy Mountain is an adventure in itself, but the association is all about books, and Kara's always buried in them. Nightingale asks if Lightning's a fighter, to which she nods, mentioning she can fly too. Or so Lightning thought. She's struggling to move an inch with all that weight over her little shoulders. Finally, she gathers enough energy and starts floating slowly through the air. The tomboy then asks if Lightning knows Wendy for a long time, noting how Wendy called Nightingale Veronica back at base camp. Nightingale confirms they go way back and tells how, before joining the association, people treated her like a puppet, and it was Wendy who showed her way to live. She reveals she had a family in Silver City when she was 13, but her parents disappeared during a commoner uprising. Nightingale's uncle then took her and her brother, Hyde. That was also the year her witch abilities first appeared inside her, but her uncle figured out her secret right away and split her from Hyde, locking her up to train her powers. He threatened to harm Hyde unless she used her abilities for his dirty work. So she became a full-on assassin. Poisoning, ambushing, you name it. She did every kind of horrendous act. As the Gillen family's wealth increased with time, her hands got dirtier and dirtier as well, soaked in the blood of others. The worst part is that